It is my pleasure to introduce Daniela Schaff. She is the head of sustainability at Wisk. She has a very long career in various aspects of aerospace, and I think I won't say too much because I think we'll go through this for speed. But she has a sort of breadth of experience, and I think it is very interesting. We've had some discussions. And with that, I think I'll just let you speak to
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always fall asleep with introduction, so
maybe at the back. Can you guys hear her okay? It's not amplified.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Fantastic. All right. Just in case somebody wants to get in contact with me, you don't have to do it right now. This slide will be up at the end of the presentation as well, so you can first listen to what I have to say and then decide. So I will just very briefly introduce Wisk, because I think most of you here are somewhat in aerospace engineering, so probably interested in that. I'm, by the way, not an engineer, so I can try to answer your technical question, but it may be that I have to refer to one of my colleagues. And then I will talk about sustainability at Wisk, and that is my field of expertise, so I should be able to answer all your questions there. And then I call it case studies. I didn't have a better word for it. It's like the big topics, really briefly touching on them. I could probably have a seminar like this, maybe 3 hour long, about each of them. So it's really high level, and yeah, I hope it spurs some interest and curiosity. And then I would like to talk about challenges and success factors in real life, like what I'm encountering, because I think it's important to understand that even though sustainability makes complete logic sense, it's not always that easy. It lives in a context, and it is itself very complex. So a lot of times when you make one decision, you make one thing worse and one thing better. So you always have to do what's best overall. And then hopefully I'm getting through this fast enough to have a little bit of time for questions and answers. And if not, please feel free to contact me, and I will do my best to answer any questions online, or maybe even set up a meeting if it's not easy to be answered. All right. So, you may or may not know, Wisk's mission is deliver safe everyday flight for everyone, and that is really it means at least eventually it should be available for everybody, like a cab and Uber right now. So it will probably not be right from the beginning because of the scale effect, but yeah, eventually this is our mission. A few fun facts. We have a little over 700 people right now, mostly in engineering, manufacturing, and finance. Obviously, the remainder in the typical functions like HR, finance, the usual marketing. Yeah, we have locations in the US, New Zealand, Canada, and Australia, where the US is definitely our biggest, in Mountain View, actually, is our biggest office. And we have over 240 patents issued, which I believe, as far as I've been told, is the most in the industry. So we really try to protect our intellectual property. We also have over 1,700 full-scale aircraft flight test flights. Sorry, and with a combination of our first 5 generations of aircraft. And since a few months, we are fully owned subsidiary of Boeing. I have a very brief video. It's 45 seconds, just to show you the first 5 flying generations. So the first one was basically a big RC airplane. It was, in that sense, autonomous. And the second and the third one were piloted. And then I'm trying to speak slowly to match the video. And then generation 4 and 5, we decided that we can do more aggressive testing if we don't have a human on board. So we went back into autonomous, and as you may know, this is also what differentiates us from other eVTOL companies, that we are going directly to autonomy. And that will lead to us not being the first one on the market, because the certification will be definitely longer. But we believe that we will be the first to scale, because we don't have to wait to get all the pilots. We don't have to train the pilots. We will have humans in the loop though, so on the ground. Okay, and then just 10 seconds of our Generation 6 aircraft. As you can see, it's slightly bigger. It's a 4-seater instead of a 2-seater. And it looks really nice and in person. It's not flying yet, but we're working on it. So a few stats that you're probably interested in. 4 seats. The altitude that we are intending to fly in is 2,500 to 4,000 feet above ground. It has a slightly under 50-foot wingspan, range 90 miles with reserve, speed 110 to 120 knots, and charge time is targeted at 15 minutes. And we will have space for carry-on and personal items. And as I just mentioned, the operation will be autonomous with a human in the loop on the ground. And we are still kind of figuring out how many aircraft per human. So, but it will definitely be better than having to have a pilot in every airplane. And my personal favorite is, I hope you can see my mouse. This one here, we call lovingly the frunk. It's a front trunk. So I love that word. All right, now we are getting into the topic that I really love to talk about, and that's sustainability. And I always love to start with definitions, and I like to even remind myself a lot of times that the word sustainable actually has nothing to do with being green or environmentally friendly or anything like that. It just means that you can do something in perpetuity with the resources you're given within the replenishment factors. I hope that made sense. To me, it's a really logical problem. We have that many resources, may it be raw material, people, finances, doesn't matter. And you have to operate within those boundaries. And if you use more than can be replenished, we will be out of it. It's that easy. It's really not complicated in my mind, but it's hard to make people think like that. And then there's the definition of the United Nations Brundtland Commission, who defines sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that's really, I think this is kind of what's driving me personally. Even though I don't have any kids, but I feel a strong responsibility for all the stuff that we and the older generations messed up, and I want to leave it better than it is right now. And then one thing, and that's why I started with the definition of the Merriam-Webster of sustainable. I really think about the triple bottom line. I do think about people, planet, and profit, because if the company is not profitable, there's no company to be sustainable. So we have to make it all. But the good news is, I personally think sustainability makes the company more profitable. So it's a win-win situation. I always love this this quote: "You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great." Nothing will be perfect from the beginning. You just have to start and improve on it. And so I would like to just briefly talk about the first steps in our sustainability program. So I should mention maybe I lead this program since October last year, so it's just about a year, and it takes a lot of time and collection of data to actually get a sense of what needs to be done. So data collection and analysis is really important to even figure out where you can make the biggest impact, where you should focus your resources. And then we are also working on a baseline assessment report currently, hopefully finished by the end of this year, which is an internal Wisk report that gives us, as the name says, a baseline that we can measure ourselves against. And I will get to that a little bit later in the greenhouse gas emissions section. And then, yeah, you have to at least start with a strategy or a roadmap, really plan out what you want to do, what you want to focus on, where it makes sense. That also kind of includes what you can't focus on. So there are a lot of little things that a lot of employees come to me and say, hey, can we, change compostable plates to reusable ones? And I'm like, we probably could and we probably should, but this is not my most important problem right now. So, and maybe another information that's important to know, you see the whole sustainability team here. Like, that's it. I'm the team. So I'm a team of one, so I really have to make sure that I focus on the things that count. And then I put it in parentheses, materiality assessment is my next step that I would love to do. And I still need to figure out how really to do it and get buy-in from leadership. But basically what that does is, I have an example. That's not Wisk. That's an example from a completely unrelated company. It's actually a pillow company. But I thought this chart explains what it does. So it looks at what's important to Wisk, where we think we can do the biggest impact or have the biggest impact, and then we go out to our stakeholders and listen to them, what's important to them. And stakeholders could include employees, investors, the cities that we want to partner with, future customers, like NGOs. It goes on and on. Like there are tons of stakeholders that are interested in what we are doing in this field. And yeah, you basically, as I said, importance to the company, importance to the stakeholders, and it's pretty clear you should focus on those 5 items on the upper right. So that's what I want to do, but it's a very work-intensive effort that also includes leadership, who notoriously doesn't have time. So I will have to see how I can get this done. And that kind of leads to the Wisk Sustainability Manifesto. I had to give it a name. The slide looked weird without it. So my vision for sustainability at Wisk is to make Wisk the most sustainable partner for all stakeholders. And it's the same stakeholders that I just mentioned. I want this to be our unique identifier. Like this is what we do. We are sustainable. And a lot of people think only because we're in electric aviation, we are sustainable inherently. I beg to differ. There's a lot of stuff that's not sustainable in the way we're doing things right now. And my mission, so basically how do I want to achieve my vision, is to embed sustainability in all decision-making processes. And that could mean, like, if you go like us, Wisk is going through a design process right now of generation 6, and we have design gates, and there's everything in there from like manufacturability to like all kinds of things that make sure that the items that the design engineer designs work as they are intended to. So if we can add a section about sustainability in there, like what materials are being used, is there any other material that would be more sustainable? Why didn't you use that? If we put that into these like decision-making processes, the existing processes, I think we will have the whole company thinking about sustainability in no time, because it's part of the process. And then my goals that I'm trying to achieve with all of this is to reduce or eliminate where possible Wisk environmental footprint, create positive impact on employee base and society. Again, people, right? It's very important. It doesn't always show up that way, but to me internally, it's very important. And to increase efficient use of resources. And again, resources, it's not only raw materials, it's also people, it's also finances. I think if you design for sustainability, processes or parts, you design for efficiency. And I'll get to that a little later. And then we need to assess and address regulatory and climate-based risk. Regulatory, currently we are a private company with no revenue, so we are not obligated to do a sustainability report, but the regulation is coming closer. And we are moving closer to the regulation. So eventually we will have to present what we are doing. And yeah, it's part of what the company needs to do nowadays. And climate-based risk, that's something where I feel everybody is kind of doing this. We all are experiencing more and more climate-based weather events that have an impact on how we live and how we work. And the same is true for companies. They have to think about these things. We have to make sure that we protect our assets and our people, and we have to design vertiports that way. We have to choose the location for vertiports that way. So we have to consider if there could be in future more flooding or more hurricanes or whatnot because of the changing climate. So I think that is definitely part of it. And then proactively engage industry and policy bodies is important as well. It sounds boring, kind of is, and it's also important. Because you can actually influence those policies. That's something I learned. I always thought policy is something that somebody else is doing, but it's not. You actually, if you get really involved, you can make a difference there. And as much as companies, I would say individuals in companies want to make the companies more sustainable, I think the only thing that really makes them do that in the long run is policy. So it's an unfortunate necessity. So one high-level topic that I wanted to touch on is sustainable supply chain. So depending on what article you read, 70 or 80%, somewhere in between probably, of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from a manufacturing company's supply chain. That's certainly different for a SaaS company or a service company, but for a manufacturing company, that's where most of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from. From the extraction of raw materials, production of parts, and the transportation of those parts. That is what is causing those greenhouse gas emissions. Then waste, it also has a big impact on the waste. It's packaging. We got battery cells in so the battery cells are like this big, and the plastic around it was this big. Every single cell was in separate plastic, and I'm like, yeah. Right now we are only an R&D company, but if we scale and have mass production, we have to find a solution to not do that. So, and then human rights concerns are definitely biggest in a supply chain, because you don't have a direct impact. And as I call it, the deeper supply chain, so the more levels you have in your supply chain, the less influence you have on these items. But it also doesn't mean, it's not an excuse. Not knowing is not an excuse. If something like that comes out, there are a whole lot of risks besides the ethical one. Like, I would feel really, really bad if we would produce any of our parts with child labor or slavery. But the reputational damage to a company and even the regulatory penalties, they all don't accept not knowing as an excuse. So it's really important that you do your due diligence as much as you possibly can. Greenhouse gas emissions, a very nerdy topic. I love data, so I love this topic, but if you're not that much into data, this may be really dry and boring. But yeah, we basically try to figure out all our existing greenhouse gas emissions. And as I was mentioning, our benchmark year, our baseline, we use 2022 for that. So we decided on a software where we put in all our data, and every day something new pops up that I hadn't considered. So it's really like, I didn't know that we had outsourced the server farm. And that's greenhouse gas emission. It's a scope 3 greenhouse gas emission. So I'm learning a lot about our company just from doing greenhouse gas emissions. But we are also looking into utility bills, and we found things that somebody else should have figured out before. Like we could save money by just switching the plan. Like we were on the wrong plan for electricity. And it's, yeah. So you can learn a ton about your business when you do greenhouse gas emissions. And it's data, it's part of what will guide us to where we can have the most impact. Without that, plus the materiality assessment, which I really think qualitative data that we really need to make a good decision where to focus our efforts. And also, one thing I would like to say is it will also help guide future decisions. If how do you say that? So if we would build a manufacturing facility, and I can show how much greenhouse gas emissions we would cause with that, with solar and without solar, then that is a decision-making factor that was not available before. And I'm hoping that the right decision will be made at that time. And yeah, so this is what greenhouse gas accounting is important for as well. And then also briefly, circularity. You probably all know what circularity means. I let you for a moment read that poster because it says it all. Right?
I love it.
Yeah. So the way we at Wisk try to really close the loop is we determined our waste streams, and it's not complete. It's the big waste streams that we have. There are certainly more, but the first 4 are mainly coming out of our aircraft. So the majority of our aircraft consists out of metals, carbon fiber, batteries, and electronics. If we can find solutions for each of them to maybe even refurbish or reuse or repair things before we look into recycling, and if we can reuse those items back into our aircraft, we would save so many greenhouse gas emissions. We didn't have to do the transportation, no raw material extraction, all of this. The problem is, or the challenge, let me put it this way. So metals is easy. We recycle metal since decades. I don't know how long, I didn't look it up, but I know we do that. We know how to recycle metals. Carbon fiber is a different story. So there are just a few companies popping up here and there, and they are still in R&D phases. So I'm in contact, in relationship with a few of them, and we even provide, like for example, carbon fiber tooling, the molds that we need to make our parts. We sent one of those the other day to one of them so that they could figure out with their shredder provider, how thick a piece or a part can be to be able to shred it, because otherwise it happens what happens with your paper shredder, that you have to reverse, try again, reverse, try again. So yeah, we are trying to really help these companies develop their technology, but it's really not there yet. So, and then batteries, it's a little better. The technology is a little further, in my opinion, than carbon fiber recycling. But I think there's still a lot that can be discovered, how to make even the recycling more sustainable than it is right now. And with batteries in particular, I think this is as much a supply chain problem than it is a sustainability problem, because we will run out of the raw materials if we continue the electrification on the path that we are right now without recycling. So that's really important. Electronics, they still give me a little bit the heebie-jeebies. I find it so difficult to evaluate if somebody says they are recycling electronics. I don't know what that means. Like, electronics are so, there's so many different materials in there. I don't know if they just plug off the gold and the platinum that's on there and then throw the rest in landfill. Is that recycling? I don't know. So I really have to, I have to educate myself more about that. And B, I have to figure out how to vet recycling providers. There are tons out there, but so far I could not bring myself to choose one because I don't know how to evaluate them. So that's a real life problem. So I'll get to that later too, that I will talk about the challenges as well. And then, yeah, the regular waste that every company has, no matter what they do, is packaging and general waste, office waste. So even there, we can find ways to recycle our waste streams, to separate them. Maybe we can even get money for the cardboard if we don't put it in the regular recycling, but separate it, right? So this is all something that I want to look into to close the loop at Wisk. And then this is a section that I think and hope that you're most interested in, life cycle analysis and design for sustainability. They go hand in hand. That's what I kind of mentioned in the very beginning. You have trade-offs. Like if you choose a better material sustainability wise, then maybe the manufacturing method that is needed to use that material is worse. So you really have to consider the whole life cycle of the part that you're designing, or of the system that you're designing, or you have to, yeah. In our case, it's the aircraft, the production system. So how do we make our aircraft? Airline operations, infrastructure. We have to design all of this with the whole life cycle in mind. And when you have the life cycle and the time continuum, and then you have the different areas that you have to consider. It's human rights, greenhouse gas emissions, toxicity, water consumption, biodiversity, circularity, and accessibility. And I'm sure there are more, but these are the big ones that you should consider when you're designing a part. Consider the impact on what you're designing. And some examples on the right-hand side is the raw material extraction. It's amazing that one aluminum can be so much better than the other aluminum just because of where they are mined and how they are mined. So yeah, this is something, and it's not easy. I'm not saying that that everybody that is designing a part or designing a system has access to all this information. I'm saying that companies need to provide this as a service to their people, to give them that information. You have to think about transportation. Does this part really have to come from Italy, or can we make it closer by, right? How is it manufactured? Sorry. There are different manufacturing methods. For example, we have an autoclave that is that is powered by natural gas. And it's needed for some of the parts, but maybe others could be made in an electric oven. So just think about the least unsustainable manufacturing method. Distribution, if you sell your parts, we are not going to, we will operate our own aircraft, but you have to think about the transport to the customer. What happens if the customer doesn't like your product and sends it back? All of these things. And then material and parts parsimony. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that term, but I best explain it with an example again. So it's basically to keep your material, the number of materials and hardware or parts, the number of different materials and hardware and parts as low as possible. So and it's again easier said than done. We have like 700 people, most of them in engineering. Let's say, I don't know the exact number, but let's say we have like 450 people in engineering. They all design something, they do the best they can, and they do talk to each other, but they will probably not talk about which bolts and nuts they are using to hold the parts together. So if we can somehow streamline that and have 25 different nuts and bolts instead of 50 nuts and bolts, different nuts and bolts on the aircraft, that is not only a financial advantage because you can negotiate better prices, it's also from a sustainability standpoint, hopefully you use the more sustainable nuts and bolts, but you have to have less tools, like at least less different tools. And you don't have to order each part separately. You have like pools of parts that can support different locations on the aircraft. Like there's a whole lot of things and training. You don't have to train that many people on 50 different tools, only on 25 different tools. So that's basically a material and parts parsimony. And mixed material parts is also a pet peeve of mine. We had this one part that was like a metal core with a resin disc around it, bonded to it with electric wires through it. I'm like, okay, I could have recycled the metal, I could have recycled the wires. Now that everything is bonded together and attached in a way that you can't separate them, I can't do anything with it. So that's a big design consideration. As if possible, I mean, aviation, aerospace obviously has some constraints, right? We have to be safe first. I'm not saying that sustainability comes first, by no means, safety is always first. But if it is at all possible, design it in a way that you can separate it. And then, yeah, that's basically assembly and disassembly. That's the point. And then I have manufacturability, maintainability, and repairability on the bottom, because there's like a circular reference going on. If you design for manufacturability and maintainability and repairability, you automatically design for sustainability, and the other way around. So this is all connected and yeah. And then one of my favorite topics, and I hope I can cause some curiosity here, is biomimicry. It always feels a little bit fluffy and tree huggery. I get it, but Mother Nature had a little bit more time to figure out sustainable systems, and she did. There's no waste in nature. One organism's waste is the other one's food or building material. It's mostly non-toxic outside of defense mechanisms of animals and plants, but other than that, there's not a whole lot of toxic materials in nature. And it's minimalistic, which goes back to the parsimony part. It really only uses, I think 98% of everything in nature is made with 5 non-toxic materials in different combinations. So yeah, design parts and systems like Mother Nature does. And if you're interested, I put a link here. They have fantastic immersion workshops. I did one, that's why I'm talking about it. And it's a whole area of study. This is not easily done. Like you need to learn a little bit more about that, but I hope I sparked some curiosity. And then how much time do I have?
5 minutes, so I have 10
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll do this quick. So I would like to mention a few challenges and success factors in real life, in my real life. So this is all very subjective. So take it with a grain of salt and take what you think can be applied to your life. But the challenges, especially if you're a team of one, is to what do you work on, strategy or the actual task? Do I figure out what I need to work on, or do I do something already? So it's that's a challenge. Funding. There's always something that's more important to the company than sustainability, unfortunately, but also understandably, because if we, for example, we don't make our aircraft fly, there will be no Wisk. So we have to figure out the balance, how we can get adequate funding. Program schedule, we are on a tight schedule. We don't have time to add another constraint to our design in sustainability. So I really have to, again, see how I can embed sustainability in the decision-making process. Leading without authority, only because I'm a team of one doesn't mean I don't have help. The whole company is behind what I'm doing and is trying to help as much as possible. But I don't have any authority over any of the people that are trying to help in their spare time, which nobody has. So they have their job, they need to perform their function first, and then they can see if they can help with sustainability. So ever-changing landscape, regulations are changing all the time. There are new products, especially on the software side. I get hundreds of emails every week promoting a new software that will help me to do my reporting so much faster and quicker. So to stay on top of all of this and trends, even in language, it takes some time. Then what I already mentioned, the conflicting or at least non-supporting company milestones. Communication about sustainability is also not always easy because not everybody understands the language. There's so many acronyms in this field, and I wish we could make it a little easier to understand for everybody. The other difficulty about it is a lot of times you have a group of people and either you don't know how well versed they are in sustainability and its language, or they are in totally different levels and how to communicate to a group like that, even in leadership. And then it's highly cross-functional. You have your fingers in everything. Like sustainability really affects the whole company, each and every department. But it also means that each and every department can contribute to sustainability in the company. So in every job, you have the option to consider sustainability in your decision-making process. My personal success factors is really relationships. It's so important. You have to build them. You have to gather support. It's a little political even, but I see your face. I agree. So they are different. I should say that there are some relationships that you need that are political, where you really need the support. Let me give you an example. Marketing, for example. I love my marketing colleagues. I also think that sustainability should never report to marketing, but they do have a symbiotic relationship. So marketing needs something to report about, something good. That means they support what you do because otherwise they don't have anything to report about. So it's that there are things that you can do with marketing that you would otherwise not be able to convince people about. Patience, resilience, persistence, they all belong together. It all takes a long time, much longer than you think it should, definitely. But yeah, because people are not that familiar with that topic, they need education first before they make a decision. Everything takes longer. Creativity and problem solving speaks for itself. We can't do things the old way. We need to figure out new solutions. And you do need grassroots and leadership support. It doesn't help. Either one alone doesn't help. You know, it's great if your coworkers tell you how much they love what you're doing, but if you don't have the leadership support and don't get the finances, resources, human resources, the support that other departments help with my work, then it doesn't help. And the other way, same thing. If leadership is all on board and nobody in the company cares, you will not go anywhere either. So networking outside of the company, because it can be a very lonely experience. Nobody does what you do, and it's good to speak to other people outside of the company about the conferences or even reach out on LinkedIn. Sustainability is a very community-based industry or field of work, so people are usually very open to talking. Continuous improvement and constant learning mindset. As I said in the beginning, nothing is perfect from the beginning. You have to start somewhere and then make it better from there. You can't wait until you have the perfect solution, because then you wouldn't go anywhere. And then what I said from the beginning, embedding sustainability in decision-making processes, so that things take care of themselves, that I don't have to babysit everything. That's important. Find your company's decision-making processes and embed sustainability in there. And with that, I'll leave you with this quote. I think you all are in a field, even without the sustainability aspect, that's not easy, but that's why it's so much fun and challenging, and gives your brain something to work on. That's why I do what I do. I love aviation, and I'm passionate about sustainability, so I'm living my dream right now. All right. And just in case anything I said sparked your interest, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask questions.
We have some time for questions.
Yeah, please.
So I just wondered how you feel about the sustainability of the following scenario. So you have the Bay Area with a big metropolitan environment, and you have thousands of autonomously flying eVTOL planes, actually. So they have to contend with bad weather, with flocks of birds,
right,
with darkness, rain, other vehicles, commercial aviation, general aviation, and there's somebody sitting in the basement of some office with a big Diet Coke next to them, and that's the person that's sort of worrying about that flight. So forget the engineering for a moment, because engineering has its own issues there. From a pure sustainability point of view, how do you feel about this picture?
Yeah, it is a very good question. And there are so many aspects, and I'm trying to figure out which one there's a human aspect, right? Like, is it sustainable for somebody to sit in a dark basement with a Diet Coke next to them for hours on end, right? Well, it's I'm trying to figure out a good answer to that. Are you talking about the environmental sustainability, or
the overall kind of whether that's a system that can be
sustained,
there,
that can be sustained?
Can be there.
Yeah.
And let's forget them for a moment, the engineering issue. Let's say that somehow we figured out all the engineering.
Yeah, I think we basically have to go into the air, because what we do on the ground is already not sustainable, right? So it's a different dimension that we have to use. But ultimately, it means that we humankind need to stop growing and stop consuming, right? And that's yeah, eventually the airspace will be filled up as well. And then where do we go from there? So it's definitely an issue, and it's also a personal conundrum that I live with. Is like my personal belief is we need to consume less, and yet we create another form of transportation, right? I justify this to myself as I won't keep this from happening, so I may as well help make it as sustainable as it can be. The other thing is I think we can learn a ton that then can be applied to traditional aerospace, which hopefully makes them better too. And this is my world domination plan is if Wisk is doing this correctly and is a poster child to the rest of the industry, they have to, do the same or better. So I'm not quite sure if I answered your question correctly, but yeah, I think again, humankind needs to stop growing. I think that's the only way how we can sustain any of our systems. Yes.
What do you think Boeing's vision is for Wisk and that when we got there views on sustainability? Do they really value that?
So yeah, I think what I just said is exactly what they are trying to do. They are actually trying to learn on the autonomy side, which by itself is also somewhat a sustainable, enhancing system, because you need less people. You can transport more people with less energy than if you had a pilot on board, right? So Boeing really wants to learn from this blank slate design. That's how you call it, right?
Blank sheet.
Blank sheet. Yeah. So also, you may be surprised and interested to hear that Boeing has a huge sustainability team. Like I personally, I have probably 25 to 30 contacts on my level. And I don't know all the teams. Like I don't know all the teams, I don't know all the people in all the teams that I know. So I would assume that they have a multiple of the 30 people that I know that are working on sustainability. And all of them are very passionate about this. They really want to make a difference. So I'm not sure if I answered the question.
I guess I'm wondering if Boeing sees this as an answer to their own sustainability.
Yes, the answer is yes. And you can see that by us being mentioned in their sustainability report as an investment in a sustainable aviation future. Yeah, the answer. Sorry, I didn't quite get that question in the beginning. Yeah, absolutely. I think you were slightly first. That's a very good question. So we at Wisk, we really try to stay away from anything defense related. Obviously, our owner company is very much involved. You ask my personal opinion, I don't think so. I would consider myself a pacifist, but it's nothing that I can directly influence. Yeah.
I suggest we're running out of time.
Okay.
We'll check with someone else.
Maybe we
Maybe
can,
a quick
try that.
question, and maybe if you have more questions to come, then you
I have a couple from the online viewers. Can I ask
think
one of
I
them?
suggest,
Oh, go ahead.
very fast one, because I
Sure.
need to.
Okay, we have one from the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, Dupeng Liu. For the sustainability and GHG emissions, have you tried life cycle analysis, LCA, to get some quantitative results?
There was one of the slides that I had to cut because I didn't have enough time. Life cycle analysis is a very important tool. At this moment in time, for Wisk, it doesn't quite make sense because we are so early in the development process. And we already have a ton of constraints, schedule, wage, regulation, certification. This is really something where we have to use it very targeted, maybe on batteries first, and then try to really iterate and get better over time. But right now, the focus is really make the aircraft fine. So, yeah, I have considered it. For now, I have parked it for another year or two.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can talk.
That's just thank Daniela here.
That was nice.